But I would say that it was the consistent posting, live streaming, engaging with the people that watch my channel helped me the most. Even though there was a couple of videos that got a lot of views, if they follow my channel, they can always count on me to post something that I try to make entertaining. I think that's really what is the big difference maker for me as a content creator is I'm always posting, basically every single day.
So happy to have my next guest here on the MMA Industry Podcast. If you are someone that consumes MMA content, you know very well who my next guest is here. He has created one of the largest and one of the fastest rising MMA YouTube channels in the world. Of course, I am talking about Lucas Tracy. Joining me here on the MMA Industry Podcast. Lucas, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, I've seen a couple of these. I've been following your channel for a while, and I'm excited to talk. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I like how you did your homework too, because that's what we're all about here on the show is kind of educating people and, kind of giving people, pulling the curtain back a little bit on what happens behind the scenes. And again, apologies for the voice. I coach hockey. Sometimes the voice goes a little bit, but we're going to play her here today for our audience and get it done. But the first question I always ask people here on the show, I think you know what's coming, is how do you describe what it is you do to people that don't follow combat sports? I'm sure you got family members who are like, what is this YouTube thing? What's MMA?
Yeah, of course. Well, I usually tell them that I'm a commentator. I say that I work with Rogan and I work with the guys in the UFC and I commentate events. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, it's an interesting question when it comes up because saying a YouTuber is just that could be anything. So
Right.
I usually just say I cover MMA, and a lot of I get a lot of confusion sometimes because I think that UFC is much more popular than the term MMA. So I usually have to follow that with, I cover the UFC, and then they kind of understand what I'm talking about. But that's usually what I say. I usually say I cover the sport. And if they ask more about it, I'll tell them, yeah, like I have a YouTube channel. So yeah.
What caught your interest in MMA? Like what initially got you into becoming a fan and eventually creating content for MMA?
Well, back in the day, like I wasn't, I wasn't growing up watching MMA. I really started in 2017, like closely following the sport. But I remember the first fight that I ever saw, and I used to, watch like fights on World Star Hip Hop. That was like a big website at the
Yeah.
time, and they would post like a lot of fights. And they once posted a John Jones Daniel Cormier interview where they were going back and forth at each other. This was like when they weren't actually live. And that was the first build up to a fight that I got hyped for MMA. Before that, I would actually watch all the Floyd Mayweather fights. I was always interested in watching the Mayweather fights, and it was the buildups, the drama, the trash talk that got me into it. So 2015 was my first fight that I watched. And then
Interesting.
in 2017, I really started getting more into it because in 2016, obviously, we saw like the McGregor and Nate Diaz fights, McGregor versus Alvarez. Probably the middle of 2017 is when I started watching a lot more. And part of that, it was actually Joe Rogan. I usually listen to the Rogan podcast every day, and he would have people on like Joey Diaz, and they would talk about Yoel Romero, and they would have like these funny stories about him. And it was actually through listening to the Rogan podcast that got me really interested in the smaller names in the sport that we would consider bigger stars if you're a hardcore fan. But just kind of listening to them talk about some of these fighters, and then me saying, I actually want to check it out. Oh, this Holloway guy. Let me check Max Holloway out. And so I watch him, fight Jose Aldo. And then I would say by 2018, I was watching every single event, like,
Okay.
fight nights. That's pretty much how I got into it. So
Interesting.
credit to Rogan. Rogan's a guy that's got a lot of people into the sport, just like me. So yeah.
Interesting. And growing up, did you have any martial arts experience? I imagine you played sports growing up.
Yeah. I did a lot of sports. My first martial art was judo.
Oh, cool.
So I started, I did a lot of judo when I was younger, because it was a thing that a lot of my family members had done. I actually had a family member that went pretty far with judo, almost to the Olympic level. He didn't get there, so it's not all the way, but judo was something that I did when I was really young, probably around the age of, I would say like 9, 10 years old. And then I got away from that. I was doing baseball. I was doing other things. But then I did kickboxing. So in 2018, I started doing kickboxing beginning of 2018, and I did that all the way up until maybe 2020. So about 2 years of kickboxing, and then I stopped doing kickboxing because I had a bit of a injury. I wouldn't say it was an injury, but I had a surgery. I had a wisdom tooth surgery,
Mm.
and every time I would spar after that, one side of my face would blow up. And so every time I would go into the gym and I would get hit, even if it was lightly, I would see like a whole bubble on my face. And that kind of deterred me from wanting to like spar and then from kind of distancing myself from sparring. It's just not the same when you're not sparring and you're just going in there to hit pads. I started getting back into bodybuilding and then I fell out of that. So it's been a while since I've actually consistently trained. And I'm always telling my chat that I want to get back into it, but I'm busy making content. I still lift. I still keep myself fit. I've been, working out for like the past 10 years. So I need to get back into it because I'm actually considering maybe someday testing myself and taking an MMA fight. That would be something I want to do at least once in my life.
Okay, we'll keep tabs on that. That's interesting. I went back and looked at your channel. I was trying to remember the first video you ever did. Do you remember the first video you ever did? And what can you tell me about that video back then?
Yeah. The first video I ever did was on Adesanya versus Robert
Yeah,
Whittaker.
correct. UFC
I was
271.
in
I
my
have it here. Yep.
271. Yep. I was in my kitchen. And I mean, I honestly cannot believe, the contrast between the content back then
Mm.
and now. And that was kind of before I really started getting good at MMA content because I'd started doing TikTok, I would say 5 months down the line after that. And I started making MMA content on there, which that actually helped me a lot with my YouTube channel. We could talk about that. But I look
Yep.
back at my first few videos, it's just nothing like what you see these days on my channel. I have no energy. Um, I don't know what was going on in my head, but I think I was trying to be, too perfect. I want everything that I said needed to be perfect. It needed to be spot on, and don't say anything that people might think is stupid. You want to be a hardcore fan, and you want to be serious and all this stuff. And I don't know. I wouldn't watch my old content. And I did that for 3 months. I would film myself. Like I didn't have a webcam.
Right.
I would take this
Film it and then
older
upload
camera
it.
that I had on a tripod. Yeah, film it, upload it. That's it. I wasn't really thinking, how are people going to engage with this? What's the energy that I'm bringing to the conversation? Am I saying anything interesting or, do I even care about, what people's first impression is going to be when they click on the video? I wasn't thinking about any of that stuff. So it's not nearly as good, but yeah, that was my first video. I did that for a little bit and then I stopped doing it just because it wasn't getting a lot of traction. And I started doing TikTok. I had an MMA TikTok account. The first video I ever did on there blew up and I came at it with a completely different energy. Um, this was in the build up to Hamzat versus Gilbert Burns.
Okay.
And I remember in the build up to that fight, a lot of people were talking about Gilbert Burns and how he's like a killer on the ground. And we know Gilbert is amazing on the ground.
Mm.
But I was saying, Gilbert Burns, I feel like he's a little bit overrated. Doesn't always hurt people or submit people on the ground. I think it's his defensive grappling that's really good, but I think he's overrated. And so I came out on this video and I said, this guy's overrated. Hamzat's going to roll over him. I'm tired of people talking about Gilbert Burns like he's some unstoppable finisher on the ground, and it went viral. And I kept making videos like that where I had like, as soon as I start the video, I'm saying something that's going to make an impact on people. And it wasn't me trying to go with the hot take. It was just me saying, this is something that kind of annoys me how people talk about this sort of fight. And I want to kind of tell it how it is. And, I'm done with people saying Gilbert Burns, this type of fighter or whatever. But I think the traction that those videos got, it kind of taught me the energy at which you start a video with, or, the kind of content that I should be making is content that I'm passionate about. The takes that I should be rolling with is the stuff that, makes me hyped up. Right.
Yeah.
And that kind of helped me with my YouTube channel. Cause when I started again in, I would say late August of 2022, I made a video on Nate Diaz and Hamzat, and I was very passionate that Hamzat was going to easily beat him, and it did well. It did well, and I had some advice from some other YouTubers that helped me, come up with like a system for thumbnails or whatever. And from there on, I was just posting all the time, and I really started to enjoy it.
Was that the video then you would say the Nate and Hamzat one that really you knew this was something that was going to take off? Was would you, because I remember we had Jesse on Fire here. I remember for him, it was the Joshua
Yeah.
Fabia stuff that really blew up his channel. So for you, you'd say it's
Yeah.
the Nate and Hamzat one.
I wouldn't say that blew up my channel, but that definitely motivated me to keep going. And it really helped me have fun with it as well. It really helped me have fun with it as well. So yeah.
Okay. Well, would you say there was a video or something where you noticed the views were way bigger than others? I remember a video you did actually. This might have been maybe later, but I remember you did one on like physiques or something in like fighter physiques or something. And I saw that, and obviously with your background and, you know, personal training and all that stuff, I'm sure that also helped to kind of give an idea. But was that one of the ones early on too that you think really kind of propelled you up the ladder, so to speak?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was that one specifically. I did do a video on like the best physiques in MMA because I used to do bodybuilding all the time. So
Right.
like I mean not competing, but I was doing bodybuilding. I was lifting in high school, and I was really into like the idea of becoming a bodybuilder, competing in bodybuilding. So that kind of was a video that was something that would fit with, you know, the experience I had in bodybuilding or whatever, and it did pretty well. But I wouldn't say that was the one. There was not really a specific video that blew up my channel. I did do a couple of documentary style of videos that really helped. I did a different builds for different fighters. Like I went over the, you know, wrestling build that, you know, some wrestlers are kind of stocky. And then I went over like strikers and how they usually have like the taller, rangier build. And that went viral. That got, you know, that has 1 million views now. I
Mhm.
posted that January of 2023. I also did a documentary on the best representatives of individual martial arts where I go over the best boxer, the best jujitsu person in the UFC. That did really well. So those documentaries blew up my channel quite a bit. But I would say that it was the consistent posting multiple times a week, live streaming, engaging with the people that watch my channel. I would say that consistently posting is the thing that I would say helped me the most. Even though there was a couple of videos that got a lot of views, the fact that people could get content from my channel all throughout the week. There's going to be a Lucas Tracy video. You know, people are always expecting one. If they follow my channel, they can always count on me to post something that I try to make entertaining. I think that's really what is the big difference maker for me as a content creator is I'm always posting, you know, basically every single day.
When did you know you could do this full time? Like, what was that moment? Was it like, you know, just a good month of earnings, or like, when did you know this was something where it's like, I'm going to leave everything else I'm doing and I'm going to go full time on this? And when was that?
I would say that was probably last summer.
Okay.
So last summer I was still helping people with training. Like I had a couple of clients, more than a couple. I say a couple of clients, not as many clients as I started with when I first started the channel. And what I mean by that is I used to train people. I used to help them with their nutrition, with their weight loss journey, with their strength gain. I used to be a trainer, right? So I
Mhm.
had a lot of online clients. Last summer, I realized that number one, I was telling my clients that I don't know if I'm able to put the same sort of energy into this as I used to. And I also just thought, do I really need to do this? Like, I enjoyed it, but a lot of my time was going into MMA content. And so, you know, I would say that my clientele started to dwindle down a little bit because I was telling them every now and then that, you know, I don't know, like I'm not really interested in this as much. And I want to be able to put my best effort into it. And if I can't do that, then I don't think that I am going to be the ideal coach. And so in the summer, late summer, I just kind of came to the conclusion that maybe this is not necessary for me anymore because my channel is doing pretty well. And you know, the income is going up.
Mhm.
So that was kind of something that allowed me to go full time. Just the channel doing better, me wanting to focus more on content, me being less focused on fitness, a little bit less passionate about it. So yeah.
Now I wanted to get into like audience feedback and like, dealing with stuff online. Do you find, cause obviously a lot of the YouTubers that are in this space, they're not like really fit people, you know what I mean? For the most part. And that's not like throwing shade at anyone, but oftentimes you'll see a lot of people in chat saying like, I could kick your ass. Do you almost get it the opposite way where because you're a fit guy, there's that insecurity from people and they want to even prove themselves even more and say like, man, come meet me and go spar. Do you ever get any stuff like that? Cause we get very weird fans in this industry.
Yeah. Of course. Well, let me just say this, that I by no means think that I'm like some super tough guy or, some dangerous guy just because I did a couple years of kickboxing. I made a video the other week on the easiest and hardest historical warriors to beat.
Mhm.
And I'm talking about Spartans and Vikings and whether or not I could take them. And,
Right. Yeah.
I joke around with stuff like that. Um, but I don't think that because I've done a couple years of kickboxing, like I'm super tough or anything. I'd like to joke around with that stuff sometimes, but I do get that every now and then. But that's just part of the space, that's just part of the space. Like if you're going to be talking and cracking jokes about I could beat a Spartan, then people are going to think, who the heck does this guy think he is? Who
Right.
does this guy think he is? Right. And yeah, you just can't let it really affect you. But um, yeah, that is something that I notice in the MMA world, but the MMA space is, it's about fighting, right? So it's no surprise.
Have you had any serious stuff, like stuff where you're like, I got to make sure, like, because, some of the stuff you touch on, it's very tribal, this sport, where you have people that you could just make a fight pick wrong and people think you would like discriminated a whole religion or something like that. Have you had anything
Right.
like major like that?
No, nothing major. Like, of course, some people will say, they'll say like "screw you" or "this guy's an absolute idiot," but at the end of the day, that's one of the things that I think is actually it is toxic, of course, but I'm not going to sit here and act like some of the stuff that I'm saying is not in any way, shape, or form. I understand why sometimes I get that energy back because I'll say something like, this guy's overrated as fuck. And even though I say that, and I understand that I'm critiquing someone that would absolutely decimate me in a fight that's 100 times better than I am in a fight, I'm critiquing them from the lens of they're in the UFC. How do they stack up against other professional fighters? But at the same time, if you use harsh language, if you're saying this guy's overrated or I don't think this guy's that good, then I understand some people are going to say, who does this guy think he is? So I get it sometimes. Um, but no, nothing serious. And you know what? One of the things that is so good about the MMA world that is good for content creators too is the fact that people are, very tribal and they are really dedicated followers of certain fighters. And if you do give a minor critique of a fighter or you give a bit of a major critique of a fighter, that actually is going to be good for you because it gets people talking. It gets people arguing in comment sections, engaging with each other. And as a content creator, that's great. That's one of the things that makes making content fun for me is because I often, we're all on social media, even something like me seeing a comment that I disagree with on Instagram in an MMA post where maybe it has a couple hundred likes, those ideas that I disagree with, I'll be able to talk about those ideas in videos passionately. I disagree with them. And I think that's one thing that is unique to MMA fans in the world of sports is if we disagree with something, we're going to let people know, right? We're going to disagree in comment sections. We're going to go to war in comment sections and, we're going to make fun of other fans. And I kind of like that there's always this banter going on. And I think it makes for entertaining back and forth. So I do like it.
I know some fighters have not been happy with you because of some of your opinions. I know Chris Curtis being one that just sort of came to mind.
Yeah.
Has that actually helped your business just to get like a fighter saying your name and then you see, maybe another video you're getting more subscribers, or is it does the opposite effect where you get people coming, trying to bomb your channel saying this guy sucks?
Um, you know, with Chris Curtis, it's interesting because I don't think. Oh yeah. I think I put him in the maybe the A tier of my salty tier list. So I made a tier list, and of course, again, I understand why people might not like my stuff because I'm making a salty tier list, which
Right.
is again, it's a bit humorous, it's a bit juvenile, but at the same time, it's for entertainment. So I understand why fighters wouldn't necessarily like that stuff. Um, but does it help my channel? Of course, if a fighter mentions me, it's going to help my channel. Is it going to blow my channel up? No, not really, unless they go on like a 5-minute rant
Mhm.
about me at a press conference. So it's not going to be like, life changing for a channel. But it also wasn't super negative. I think that, if some people agree with Chris Curtis, they might not like my content. And that's totally fine. But I would say there's no serious harsh backlash, or there's nothing that really, blows me up that much from a moment like that. But it is nice to see my channel get recognition. And, even though I do critique fighters on my YouTube channel, I keep it usually to the fight style that they have, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Nothing
I made a
personal. Yeah.
self-care list about attitudes, but, you never wanna get very personal about stuff because, of course, like, I don't really say many personal things about these guys,
Yeah.
so.
No, I completely agree with that. And then kind of on that same note, like I know you want to get into interviewing fighters. I've seen this on your channel that like that's
Yeah.
something you want to get into. Do you not feel like because of the way you've created your audience and your style that has almost hurt you to some degree? Because there's some fighters being like, I've seen this guy talk about another fighter and
Yeah.
I don't agree with it. Like, I imagine that's been a challenge for you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, I've been trying to get interviews, and it's tough. You know this because you've been doing this for a long time, and I'm sure when you started, it was a lot harder than it is now. I think a big part of it is just that I'm not in the establishment. Like, I'm not working for one of these companies that have been grandfathered in to the MMA world for a long time. I'm not working for MMA Junkie where, it's easier to get fighters to do interviews with you. I'm an independent YouTuber. So that's a big part of it. They'll get a message from me. Maybe I email a manager and they just won't take it that serious because of that. And
Mhm.
I think that a lot of fighters, and this is just if they're not doing interviews with people because they're not established. I think that that is something that it's not necessarily great because, again, if you do an interview with, let's say, MMA Guru, who has damn near 200,000 subscribers, you are going to get a lot more attention and, possibly fans from an interview like that than you would on MMA Junkie. Even the bigger stars, they get a lot of views on a place like MMA Junkie. But I think that the independent MMA YouTubers actually have like, the most dedicated followings and they want to see their favorite MMA personality interact with the fighters where they know there's going to be interesting, funny questions rather than the more mundane questions that people tend to get asked all the time in interviews. So I think that there are some serious benefits to doing interviews with MMA YouTubers, guys like, MMA Guru, as I said.
Well, and
Obviously, I would love to get interviews too, but as you said, a problem might be that, they don't like my channel, and that does make it difficult to get interviews sometimes. And I understand that. I totally understand that. I don't know what it is though, because I've tried to get interviews. It might be that. It might be that, and it also might be the fact that I've not really established myself for long enough. So it could be a little bit of both.
well, we can talk after because I'm the guy when it comes to interviews. It's and I will actually say, yes, it's easier in the sense for me now of getting interviews where there may be bigger names that I couldn't get when I was coming up, but it's actually almost harder for a couple reasons. Number one, I'm independent, so there's companies, I've talked about this before, the UFC will literally set up interviews for them. And that's something that bothers me too, because people are like, wow, you got that interview when they don't even realize that the UFC is setting it up for them, where you don't have to go through all the
Yeah.
legwork. Like if you're a submission radio or even if you're aerial, you're not getting those handouts. So it's a little bit different as far as trying to set up certain interviews. Sometimes UFC will do that. Others, they've been veterans in the game. They're able to have those contacts. But the one thing that has hurt us to a certain degree is a lot of these fighters having their own channel, because they're like, listen, if I want to get a message out, I'll just post it on my own channel. I'll get the ad revenue. I'll get this other stuff. So that has changed it a bit. I mean, I'm still able to make a living doing it, but it certainly has changed that to a certain degree. Let me ask you this though, because this kind of ties into something I wanted to get into and something that I've noticed, because I'm on both sides of the coin. I'm a content creator part-time. I'm a full-time, I'd say, interviewer and I work for outlets. I think it's getting harder and harder for the legitimate media, the mainstream media in our bubble, to ignore what the content creators are doing, because now you're seeing it everywhere. You're seeing it in UFC countdowns. You're seeing it come out. How much do you think that like the growth of the creators in this space and how people are consuming content? Because You go look at the views for events, right? There's a prime example. Go take 301. Junkie didn't even send a crew down there to go cover that event because I think they thought, financially it's not going to work out for us. The views are lower now because I think what you're seeing now is the rise of the commentators, people like yourself, people that are making content that's more on the commentary side of things as opposed to just this is a fighter and here's what they have to say. I think that's kind of blending together with how people are consuming content. So my question there is, do you think that benefits you because we are seeing a shift in how people are consuming content?
Oh, absolutely. People want an alternative to, as I said, the established media outlets. Like I know that some of these big media outlets, MMA Junkie, MMA Fighting, they have different shows or like I would say like podcasts multiple times a week, live streams where it's all the guys that work there that are on the podcast. They're all talking amongst each other, but the channel that they're on has a big following because they've been around for 20 years and
Yeah.
they're at the press conferences and they're getting interviews here and there, but people aren't necessarily tuning in for the personality, right? And I think that that's what people want. People want an alternative to that. They want to watch people that are just fans like them that they feel like they're bantering with or they can interact with on live streams and people that aren't necessarily scared of saying something that might annoy a fighter that they might have a potential future interview with because again that's what they do as a content creator. I've noticed that at press conferences, especially the big ones, a lot of the reporters, they'll ask questions and they're kind of fluff questions. Like they're not really
Well,
asking
you know
questions
why
to
that
get a
is.
big
I don't know if you saw my
interaction.
video on this. I did a video a couple months ago. The reason that is because oftentimes at pressers, you get media members that are there that have never covered a UFC event before, but because they work for a big
Yeah.
outlet, the outlet sends them. And so they ask questions like, are you going to fight differently at 145 Aljamain Sterling than you did at 135 because it's a different weight class? Like that to me is a throwaway question. Why would he fight differently? You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly. Oh, absolutely. And again, I also think that it might also be that they want to be on the good side of a fighter because a lot of these media people, they're around the sport, they're
yeah.
around the events all the time. Maybe they want to have a water cooler conversation or they want to be able to be good with people when they pass by them in the hallway. And I think that independent content creators, we're not concerned with that because our job is not to go to the events, to cover it, to be cordial all the time. Our job is to make entertaining content. And so, I feel like, we're not really as concerned with, I got to not walk on eggshells or I have to walk on eggshells, I should say. So yeah,
Okay. Going a few steps back here, you mentioned the interviews. If you could interview anyone right now, who would be your number one pick? Who would you want to get on your show?
that's a great question. My favorite fighter is Alexander Volkanovski. So it's hard not to say Volk. I would love to do an interview with Volk. I think that would definitely be the one that I would go with. Other than that, I think now that I think about it, I think an interview with Makhachev would be pretty funny because he's got a real sneaky sense of humor. He's got some good trash talk, competitive trash talk. And I'd like to ask him about the grappling of Dustin Poirier because he has a famous quote where he's, DC is telling him that Dustin's a black belt, trying to hype up Dustin Poirier. And he's saying, who give this guy a black belt, brother? And I would love to have an interview with Makhachev now that I think about it. I think it'd be real good. Be a funny interview.
Let's get to some rapid fire questions. This is one of my favorite parts of the show. So we're gonna do some UFC ones first, and then we'll do some fun ones after. Let's go. Just first thing that comes to mind. There's no wrong answers here. It's just your opinion. Lucas Tracy, who's the best striker in the UFC?
It's hard not to say Sean O'Malley with the eye test right now. I'm going to say Sean O'Malley, Wonderboy Thompson, Alex Pereira. I think those are my
That's
top
three
three.
answers. We just need one. We just need one
Yeah.
answer, and then on to the next one. You don't even have to explain why. You can just say
I think O'Malley. It's hard not to say O'Malley
who's the best
with the way
grappler,
that he's looking. Islam Makhachev.
funniest fighter.
Funniest fighter. Man. Shamil Gaziev.
Okay. Who would you? Not for the reasons that. Not for the reason that the question was like, who makes you laugh? Not. I know where you're going with the one with Shamil, but I guess we'll take that one. Anyways. That's fine. If you could have dinner with any fighter, who would it be and why?
That's an interesting one. I have a girlfriend, so I'm gonna say a guy fighter. I would say Volk to consider or to try to convince him not to fight Topuria again so that he can actually fight some people with pillow hands and have a less dangerous fight. I don't want to see Volk get knocked out a bunch of times. So maybe I could convince him to take another fight, maybe an Aljamain Sterling fight or something like that.
Who would you want by your side in a street fight?
Um, that's a good question. I would say Sergey Pavlovich. I feel like that's an answer a lot of people give, but I would say Sergey Pavlovich. He just has, he's got crazy boxing, tons of power. He can hit you from 12 feet away because he's got a crazy reach as well. It's probably Sergey Pavlovich.
I've never had anyone give me that answer, so you're unique in that sense, which is
Okay.
great. Who has the highest fight IQ?
That's tough. I'm going to say Alexander Volkanovski.
And what is a dream fight you'd like to see in the UFC?
Ilya Topuria versus Islam Makhachev. That's my dream fight. The build-up, both of those guys have like unbeatable auras about them. We saw how well Volk did against Makhachev. I think that his build, his stature kind of gave Makhachev some issues. And I could see Ilya Topuria with that stature, with the good grappling. I think he has more power than Volkanovski. He would have a much better chance at actually getting a KO. And I also want to see how he compares to Volkanovski when he fights Islam Makhachev. So that's just a fight that I want to see. Also, the confidence that Topuria has, I think that would be really interesting to see in front of Makhachev at press conferences or stare downs. I think it'd be a really good build-up. Both of those guys are two of my favorite fighters. So Ilya and Makhachev is my dream fight right now.
Okay, let's get to the fun questions. And we got 2 more questions. We'll get you out of here. Who's your favorite athlete outside of combat sports?
Shohei Ohtani. I think that guy is, listen, I don't even watch baseball games, but I used to watch baseball. I used to be a big fan of baseball. And he's a special athlete, man. I think that he is one of the most talented athletes ever, probably the best baseball player ever. So just watching his highlights like on MLB's Instagram is pretty fun. So I'd say Shohei Ohtani.
Cool. We got to keep these rapid fire, though, because I want to get you out of here. Favorite movie?
Braveheart.
Favorite actor or actress?
Mel Gibson, man. Braveheart. I think Mel Gibson. Robert De Niro. I actually say Robert De Niro.
Favorite TV show?
Game of Thrones.
Favorite comedian?
I'll say Bill Burr.
Favorite cheat meal?
Ooh, pasta. I like pasta with like a heavy sauce, heavy cheese sauce, bolognese, something like that.
Favorite travel destination?
Hawaii.
Favorite animal?
I'd say dogs.
What's your hidden talent?
I wouldn't say it's a hidden talent. I don't know if I have I'm fast. I would say I'm fast. I was gonna say I'm a good public speaker. That's not really because I do that for a living, but I think I'm pretty freaking fast when it comes to a sprint.
Okay, we should
Very fast.
we should get like a race set up with you and other YouTubers and see who the fastest is. That would be
I think
interesting.
I honestly,
yeah,
I
I don't
think
know.
I
I'm
would,
not a
I
I'm a
would
long
post
distance
every-
guy. I'm a long distance guy. I'll
Yeah,
tell you
yeah.
that. I can
Oh
do
yeah,
like 10K.
I love long distance running. I would put that up there as a secret talent too. I think I've got a really good ability to go on like a long run, 10 plus miles easily. I can do.
Last fun question. What is your biggest pet peeve?
I don't really have many pet peeves. I don't. I'll say people counting title defenses as like the end all be all in a GOAT conversation. This guy has more title defenses, therefore he's the GOAT. Some title defenses are like, not even better than a number one contender win. Depends on who you're fighting, level of competition. I would say title defenses being like the king of the GOAT conversation. I'd say that's a pet peeve of mine.
What's the best take you've ever made, and what's the worst take you've ever made?
Worst take I've ever made. I would say Beneil Dariush is going to smoke Charles Oliveira. I really overhyped Beneil Dariush, and I was calling him like the wild man Makhachev. I was kind of looking at Charles as someone that was so open to getting hit with a hook, which wasn't even that big of a weakness for him. And I just think that that was a really bad take of mine. I would also say picking Kevin Lee to destroy Renat Fakhretdinov was a pretty bad take. Those are the worst takes. The best take I ever had, pains me to say it, but I pretty much predicted the downfall of Volkanovski. I would say the mentality of Volk. I was talking about this even before the Yair Rodriguez fight. I said Volk's gonna have like a horrible decline because he's going to leap at the bits for any opportunity, always trying to not really prove a point, but he's always wanting to like stand up for himself and show everyone that, you always have to take risks. And through that, he took the short notice fight with Makhachev. Doesn't want to wait a long time. He's leaping at the bits to get back in there. Let's go. Let's turn around 3 months later. I was talking about this for a while. I was saying this is, how it's probably gonna go down for Volkanovski, is the fact that he's just gonna be leaping at the bits to get fights all the time, not taking them in good circumstances. I would say that's probably the best take I've had,
Okay.
predicting all of the fights perfectly to a T. The way he'd beat Yair, the way he would lose to Makhachev in the rematch, the way he'd lose to Topuria. So yeah.
What is your ultimate career goal, or are you doing it right now, or is there something more you want to achieve in this industry that you're doing?
I would say, I mean, I kind of had this thought yesterday, but I right now just need to kind of appreciate the fact that, again, I think that at the end of the day, and this is not, I'm not going to break down the meaning of life, but it's really good to be able to enjoy what you do for work, because, at the end of the day, life is whatever you're experiencing in the now, and every day is going to be pretty similar than the last. We're not just going to have one point in time, 10 years from now, everything is going to be perfect, peaches and cream. Um, Life is very similar day to day. And I really appreciate the fact that I get to talk about MMA for a living because I'm really passionate about it. And the fact that I'm doing this for a living, just talking about a sport that I love, bantering about it, I think that that is honestly just really cool for me. And I think that I don't have any very specific career goal. I would eventually like to help MMA get a bit more mainstream. I know it's mainstream, but blow it up a little bit more to get more people into the sport. Um, that would be really cool if I could end up doing that. But I would just say being able to make MMA content for a living is, I mean, it's already an accomplishment for me because this is, what I'm really interested in. So yeah.
What does your day to day look like? And I'll add that as a second part. How do you balance, being a fit guy, all that stuff with doing this? Because you have to be, sitting for a long time. How do you balance that? And what does your day to day look
Yeah.
like?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the downsides about making content is you're always hunched over at your computer. At least I am quite often. I would say I don't really have a set schedule. I like live streaming in the beginning of the day because I like to stream and I like to film content. And I have a lot of energy in the beginning of the day. Sometimes, whatever conversation I'm having with my chat, that'll help me think of an idea for a video. So I would say I usually like to live stream in the beginning of the day. Then maybe I'll go out, I'll get some sun, I'll go for a run, maybe I'll go to the gym to work out, and then I'll film a video. So that's usually how I do it. Or if I have an idea, then maybe I'll film it as soon as the day starts if I think it's going to take me a while. And uh, I always try to at least get out and do some sort of physical exercise just so that I'm not like always hunching over in my seat. Right. So, yeah, I don't really have like the most set schedule though.
I encourage all my viewers to get out and go outside at least for a little bit during the day. Get that sunlight. It improves your day
Yeah.
tremendously.
Yeah.
I have to work out before I do any content. Like I'm up at 5 usually every morning, and I basically get up, stretch, go to the gym. That's for me. I'm a morning person, and I'm the exact same way. That's actually why I like doing my live streams first thing in the morning, because if I have to do interviews, it's like a good warm up for me. So
Oh, yeah.
I find it that
Yeah, for
certainly
sure.
helps with that as well. Okay, my last question. If you could give any advice to anyone looking to do what you're doing, what advice would that be before we get out of here?
My advice is if you want to get into MMA content, um, I would say is there's not just one way to do it. There's a million different ways to do it. First piece of advice, have energy in your videos because if you're going to make videos, for example, or live streams, you need to have energy. You got to think about what it's like for people to click on your content. What's the first impression going to be like? So you can't just be treating this as like, you're just talking to your computer. No, you're talking to potentially thousands of people that could watch your video. Have energy. Number two, I would say whatever gets you the most hype, the most passionate, even if it's something that you think is insignificant, even if it's just like a little thing that not many too many people are paying attention to in the world of MMA, if you're excited about it, if you're hyped about it, make content about it because again, a lot of this is about entertainment and whatever you can convey in a passionate way with energy is going to be interesting to listen to. So I would say number one, have energy. And number two, whatever you get excited about when it comes to the MMA space, make content about it, write about it, talk about it.
Lucas, thanks for doing this. This was awesome. We went over time. I figured that might happen here, but before I go here, just let people know anything you got going on with your channel this week, anything that's coming up. This is going to be coming out on Wednesday, but it'll be out early for my Patreon members. But anything you want to mention before we get out of here, the floor is yours, man.
No, not really. I want to just thank you for having me on. Thanks for inviting me again. I've been watching your channel for a while and yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for listening.